Now, some of you may know that over the past few years, I've gotten really interested in the idea of lawn alternatives. And that started because I don't like mowing the grass. There's much better things I'd rather be doing on a Saturday morning in my garden than mowing the grass. But also looking at how much a lot of our issues, like with the prevalence of invasive plants and fish kills and these kinds of things, are coming from us over fertilizing our lawns and running into natural areas where those high fertility levels, high nitrogen levels are allow some of the exotics to outcompete our natives. And also, as I drive around, I see people watering their lawns to keep them, bright green over the summer. It made me realize that it's really unsustainable for us to continue to keep doing our lawns like that. So first looked at things that would mimic lawns, low grasses, clumping grasses, that you wouldn't walk on like a lawn. But, and those are interesting. But as I always talk about, diversity is what gets me excited. Gardens get me excited. Plants get me excited. So I thought, why do we need to plant our lawns with one thing out there? And so I had seen some information years ago, decades ago, about flowering lawns in the UK. And it got my wheels turning and thought, well, maybe we should plant a spot out and see how it works as a flowering lawn. So we took this patch where I'm sitting right now and killed off the grass. The only difficult part of doing a flowering lawn is killing off the turf really well before you get going. And we've planted it with a variety of things that will tolerate some foot traffic. Don't want to walk on these things all the time, but they will tolerate some level of foot traffic through here. And so right now we're in early spring, and you can see the creeping moss phlox. We've got that in white and pinks out here. We could plant some blues out here as well to give us even more color going on. We've got some dwarf bulbs, some dwarf daffodils that are flowering in here right now. Got some right here, a little patch in front of me, and some other spots is a little tiny creeping cinquefoil or potentilla that forms a really nice dense little mass with these little buttercup flowers. Later we'll be getting thymes. I got some thyme right here, so when you do walk on the garden, it smells great. I've got some succulents like ice plant right here that'll give us color later in the season. We've got veronicas, which are just getting started, that'll be purple and going, and some that have really been exciting to realize how well they do in this situation are our ajugas or bugleweeds. This is a nice patch just coming into flower with these beautiful blue-purple flowers over dark burgundy leaves. And right here, behind and beside me is a new series of bugleweeds with bright gold leaves and these blue flowers, and it just gets covered in blue when it's in full bloom, and then it'll be gold all the rest of the season and kind of coppery gold all winter. So our flowering lawn is really designed to be beautiful and to be resilient. We want a landscape that's resilient. So if we plant something and it doesn't do very well, the plants around it will continue growing in. If we have a spot where things haven't grown in very well, we'll plunk in a few new little plants, maybe creeping oreganos or other things. We have a patch of clover that started growing that we didn't plant, and I've had people say, well, what are you going to do about that? And I say, nothing. Clover's beautiful. It's great flowers. And all of these things on a warm day, you'll see bees and other insects just hovering all over this. So we've gone from what was basically just plain green that we had to mow every week to an area that's full of life, full of pollinators. We don't mow it at all. We do weed it a bit. It needs some weeding, but we've never used sprinklers on it. We hand water when we first planted, but after that, no more. And we do get in here and walk on it and to weed it and care for it. And it's really become a beautiful, beautiful piece of the garden. Now, I won't tell you to get rid of your lawns if you have young children who play soccer out there, or you have a dog that runs around, or you play frisbee golf in your backyard, or bocce, or lawn tennis, or something like that. By all means, have a turf lawn. But if you don't have that kind of use for your yards, and it's just a flat place between the street and your house or out your back window, consider planting it with some really low maintenance, spreading, ground covering plants. For a typical flowering lawn, you don't want plants that get more than 6 inches tall, but they can really be any type. Look for evergreen, year-round ones that will creep and root in as they creep, not just spread on top of the ground. And you'll find, while it's maybe a little bit pricier to start with buying all those plants to put in the long term, it's much cheaper than having to go out and mow and fertilize and weed eat and spray every week. So we've been really impressed by this. So much so that we're starting to branch into some other spots and think about different ways of removing turf while keeping our cost inputs, both in labor and actual physical inputs, keeping those lower, getting more diversity in the landscape, providing more benefits to the pollinators and the insects and the birds and all the other little critters that are out there. And I think there's going to be a lot of ways we can do that, and we just need to be a little more innovative and stop thinking of our lawns as places where it has to be solid green 12 months of the year, looking like plastic AstroTurf. And we also need to not think about actually putting out AstroTurf, which is apparently becoming a thing that people do nowadays. But hopefully when you come out to the Arboretum, you'll check out the flowering lawn. We've got some other resources on our YouTube page about flowering lawns and how we manage them and what we do with them. And I think it's pretty obvious right now that they can be really, really beautiful spaces and great additions to our landscape without being a lot more work. All right. This flowering lawn project has been kind of interesting for me. Like I said, I didn't know how it would turn out, but it seems to be going well. But there's one key, and I didn't really talk about it too much during that video. And it's like most things in the garden, like we talked about with the soil, it's all about that capital at the front end, getting things right. And the big key is getting rid of whatever was there, whether it was turf or anything else, trying to make it as, getting there and keep it as clean as possible to start before you plant. And, I've had people ask, can you give a list of plants that you can put in a flowering lawn? And, our goal was to have plants that didn't get taller than 6 inches and would spread in the flowering lawn. But there are no rules, there's no reason your flowering lawn can't verge into a prairie like, you've had experience with installing. No reason it can't be all natives, can't be all, whatever kind of floats your boat with your project there. There aren't a lot of people tell you there are rules, but there aren't really rules for these things.
It's all about height too, and as we saw from the plants that Tony brought us, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's just kind of seeing what you're interested in that's going to live in that kind of situation. and not require a whole lot of aftercare. Part of the lawn alternative is getting away from too much water and watering all the time. And all that palette of plant material lends itself well to that, from the bulbs to the all that stuff. So it's completely wide open what you can pick. I'm embarrassed to say, after we did that talk, somebody came up to me and said, where is this lawn that he keeps talking about? And I was like, I don't think I've ever walked through it before. So I got with that person, and we walked out there, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of nice. Yeah. So, it's in a spot that, you get here and you go out, but it's right here. It's well worth seeing, and it's got its legs underneath it right now. Yeah. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, it's right outside my window is where it is. I could watch it fail if it failed and not. It was one of those things that I had seen in Europe a little bit, and some of those things don't translate very well, and this one did. And it is, one of the things that we hear, and me especially, always harken back to are some of the things JC said. And one of his goals, as he said, was to diversify the American landscape. And at that time, that really meant plants.
Yeah.
We needed more diversity of plants. Well, there is quite a bit of diversity in plants out there now compared to then. And so a lot of that's been accomplished. But that still holds true with that diversifying the landscape. It's just in different ways, Even when his thinking at that time was still big expanse of green lawn, and then a diversity of plants planted in a typical suburban landscape, whether that was foundation plantings and the things around the edges. And now we're looking more and more at how do we diversify the landscapes as they exist now to solve problems. With JC, one of the problems was everybody grew the same thing,
right,
and that meant the industry couldn't grow and thrive. And now we're saying there's too much water being used. I mean, we're lucky here in the East that we have a lot of water, but having gone through the 2007 drought when our reservoirs were drying up, and and we've got, in our cities, we've got too much water every time it rains until it all, and it all goes straight into the storm drains and causes issues. We've got too much fertilizers on our lawns. We've got a lack of pollinators and issues happening with pollinators. And so diversifying that American landscape means thinking about our landscapes differently. Maybe we don't all need a lawn. I know we both have little fur babies at home that are part of the family. They're so much easier than my kids. Now that my kids have moved out.
They're almost as expensive. One trip to the vet.
Yes, indeed. But maybe we need some lawn for those dogs, although my newest one does not like to walk in grass, but we'll go through the mulch and do its business there all the time. But what we need, what we don't need, what we can use, we really have to think about that diversity. And we talked, and it always comes back around to that. Yeah. We talked about that with Richard Olson, talked about that with Denacia, talked about that with Tony Avent. It's the landscapes. It always works with diversity, and that's what we've always been about, and that's what JC talked about early on.
Yep.
What are as we talk about flowering lawns and those kinds of things, what are some things that go through your mind about kind of that sustainable landscaping, the sustainable systems that you're looking forward to maybe exploring here with us and faculty here?
We're lucky to be in a state, in a part of the country where, with the university system, there's a lot of that line of thinking already ingrained in it, and it's nice to be a part of that and be under that umbrella. But there are so many good nurseries here that are doing things differently, diversity of plant material, the processes of how they do things, and all that translates into all the stuff that JC talked about and diversifying the landscape. It trickles all the way down to them. So that's crucial. So we've got a lot of places that we can pool and relationships that we built over years to get these plants and do these things from. So things like the flowering lawn, maybe doing more of that kind of stuff. Maybe, Lake Wheeler, our research nursery, we've got to come up with some ideas on some green mulch and planting in between the rows of the plants that are out there. So that's something that's on my brain, is thinking about, clover always jumps to mind. That's kind of an easy thing, but are there some other things? And maybe partnering with folks here at the university to come up with some of those ideas. Doing more green lawns here. I'd love to do Annabelle at Duke Gardens has forever changed my thinking on no-mow areas, and we've got spots in the garden. I'd love to put a little pocket prairie. It's a great place to stand and have conversations. It's a great place to diversify the plants that we have. It's a great place for beneficial insects and all that entails. It's water-wise, and they're attractive. So I've got some places in mind where maybe we can do some of that kind of stuff. The other side of that, the other coin of working with nurseries, finding places in the Arboretum to do that, is tapping into our interns and getting them involved with some of this stuff. We've been doing the sustainability thing for a while, and it's changed over time. It's become a catchphrase, and it's kind of gotten washed away with that. So, I want to tap into the interns that we get this year and moving forward to get some of those ideas from them. And, what are some things that they're seeing and things that catch their eyes? They're going to be the next audience here, the next people taking care of the next us, taking care of this place. So tapping into that resource is crucial. And, it's a two-way street. We're taking these young folks that are interested in this career and helping us get things achieved, but, is getting them to give back a little bit too on that creativity and some of those ideas. So, the types of things that we're planting, the species, areas that we're interested in collecting, that bleeds into that also. How can we use those in the landscape, and what areas are we going to go to? So there's a lot of overlap with that, just from the topic of flowering lawns. That has me thinking about other things in the Arboretum as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's exciting times, and we've talked about some green wall projects that are not only sustainable from a plant point of view, but also if they work out what we're kind of thinking of and what we want to play with, would be useful in with less money invested in them, so perhaps better in low-income communities and things like that. And that opens the door for thinking about some of these other things. Rain gardens, these are all, these are built from, ag engineering, but what are some maybe more economical ways to do these things to help solve the problems that are out there. It's really exciting. And I think you're right about talking to the students and young graduates and industry folks about where they see the problems and help us figure out what might be solutions.
Sure.
And much like plants dying in the garden because we're trying different things, and some are successful and some are not, like we talked about with Tony. And, part of that really comes down to, the flowering lawn. If that may not have been successful, if it had not been successful, we would have maybe tried something different and thought about it in a different way. But we're okay if some of our thoughts on green walls don't pan out and they fail. Well, we'll have learned. We'll try something else.
It's an absolute leap of faith with some of these things. When I first started looking at prairie stuff, it's like, I have no idea if this is going to make it or not. It could be an epic fail, but you don't know until you try it. And there's going to be some things that are going to work out and that aren't going to work out. Plant species or other things. But you mentioned rain garden. I'm thinking about biostream beds, and this links back into interns again. Ian Simpkins, who came through NC State and was in this part of the world, he put in it was one of his ideas to put in a biostream bed at Swarthmore College when I was there. And there's room to do some of that, and that's part of the thinking with this berm project, is to, instead of all that water that comes from the necessary and beyond and zips down through that part of the garden, is let's capture that water and use it for something, and come up with a way to daylight it and keep it out of the drainage system, and let it dissipate through the garden. It's always going to move through. It's always going to wash out paths and plants and things like that. And let's come up with a way to form the paths in the landscape to kind of fix a problem, a sustainable kind of ecological way. And that ties into interns and students and all that kind of stuff as well.